Because
Oh,
the rest of them, I think, what's that, did you want one? Okay.
I
You want
talked to
one,
Ted
Billy?
Hagan.
Sure, why not?
Okay, I'll just put one
I
for
told him that
everybody.
we were thinking about opening our pool, but I said there was talk that people from Sioux Falls wouldn't be welcome, and he said, fine, I'm gonna put up an ordinance, you can't shop here either.
Fine.
I think
That'd be better for us.
It was a joke, but you know. He's about 50-50 on opening pools, but he said, quite honestly, we don't. It's more of an issue getting the staff for the pools. I said, we've already taken care
Yeah,
of that.
we've done that.
Yeah. So that's been my conversations today.
So if we open up, will Caleb and those guys stay with the parks part, or will they go to
we'll have to talk to them.
figure that out? Do you have enough lifeguards without them, you think?
Possibly. I think we have 9 without those two, without the Caleb's.
Is T gonna open their pool? Is that what you guys were trying?
You know what, I never asked him about the pool. That's
I can shoot.
probably shouldn't anyhow, that's a
Well,
contentious subject with him. He
I
doesn't like
got
the
an
pool.
email from, Wild Water West,
Oh, yeah?
and they're planning on opening, but later than
Right.
what they normally would.
Middle of June or something like that.
Yeah, so,
We'll
I
see
think if
what-
we get later into the season, we just, I hate to have people pay full price for a pass so we can just
Figure
add
something.
it to next year or something.
We'll see what, I'm thinking she's gonna loosen up some of the strings tomorrow from her conversations today. All we gotta do is tell them we're having a rodeo in the pool, and she'll say, like, whatever.
Yeah, they yanked him pretty much. She must have been down or somebody really yanked him, they pretty much told her to go pound sand, they're opening everything up within the next couple of weeks. Unless something drastically changes, obviously.
I can't wait to hear, because she said she's got a new curve and everything on it, and she's praising how good it's doing. Wall is gonna be mentioned in her, speech tomorrow, because they put 50 grand aside for their businesses in town.
Who did?
Wall,
Oh,
but then they go but they're only paying their utilities, and I'm like,
oh, are they publicly owned utilities?
it must be.
I think they.
Like beers free?
You heard from Brock?
I haven't talked to Brock. Want me to text him or remind him?
I'll text real quick.
So anyway, my one I'm just gonna have for this week is just stay 10 feet, or 6 feet away from each other, under 10 people. But
Yeah.
I think that will be waived in the next couple weeks. We'll see. The thing that came through that loud and clear is nobody has any really good data. Nobody has any good data. When I was talking to Ted Hagan, I said, there's so many studies out there, you just gotta pick the one you think is right, isn't it? And he goes, basically.
Iowa's open,
There it is.
everything back up, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they will be.
Status.
So without the data, how can we make great decisions, you know? And I love how everybody says it's all data and science-based, but they don't have any data they provide us.
Well, Yankton County has what, 5 cases?
The whole town of Yankton?
I think, something like
Yeah,
that.
I
It's,
can't tell you.
it's like a ridiculously low number, so basically they just got together and said, yeah, try and stop us, basically.
Well, the only thing that's unfortunate is, and I didn't ask her this question because I got enough on when I asked her about opening up in the middle of her curve. I got to talk with Chris just briefly today, and I spoke with Ted Hagan. By the way, I told him if we open our pool, Sioux Falls isn't welcome to come out there, and he said basically you couldn't shop in Sioux Falls anymore. He's joking. He said, well, then you guys can't shop. He says their pools are 50-50, but it's not a numbers thing. Why the thing is about getting the staff involved, and getting the staff.
Yeah,
ready
they're
to
probably in
run.
a little bit different situation with
Yeah.
staffing than we are with.
And Christie said if we open
Okay.
it up in this, we have to
Yeah,
do
it's a
things
whole
like what we talked about, maybe limiting that number. Then she talked about spraying everything not in the pool.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
We
Good
still
to
have
go?
5 weeks to decide on it.
yeah, we
Yes.
do, and it will all change in 5 weeks, pretty much. Because they'll find some numbers, wherever they find their numbers. All right.
Okay, so everybody has in front of them, the most recent version of the spreadsheet. The one on board docs has been updated a couple times in the last few days. Nothing terribly significant, but we'll run through some of that. What we wanted to get at this for was preparation more than anything. As you know, if we decide to do a supplemental ordinance, or if we decide that we need to change the budget, we have to do that in 2 meetings, not 1. So this is simply preparing us for if we need to do it or not do it. That is an option as well. You know, my discussions with other communities, most are planning on a 10% reduction in property tax and a 25 to 30% reduction in all sales tax. What I have in here is a 5% reduction in property tax and 25% in sales tax, as well as a few different reductions here and there. You know, local highways, we expect to get less there because people will be driving less, using less gas. That's funded from gas taxes.
In terms of the, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
in terms of the reduction in property taxes, you're just looking at basically businesses, right, that aren't making,
For the most part, yes. I think there will also be people that, you know, if they don't pay their real estate taxes in escrow, they'll default on it and pay it in later years. You know, you'll see on line 3, property tax all prior years. That's essentially what that is. That's past due property tax that's still coming to us. So, you know, for this year, for example, we expect to get, you know, about $18,000 in prior year sale or property tax. Could be a number of reasons. You know, 18,000 is not that many properties. But, you know, one could assume that given unemployment levels, reduced wages, those kinds of things, that we could potentially see a reduction there. Campground sites, at this point we're kind of full, but we're also not opening the shower house or the restroom there. So we have a $7,000, or excuse me, a $4,200 reduction in there for campsite fees, but I don't know if we're necessarily going to see that or not. It seems like we're still getting a fair amount of reservations for those. All in all, what those reductions mean is about $145,000 less in revenue in the general fund this year. That's really not that bad. It's not great. When you look at other communities, you know, there are some communities that 70% of their general fund is made up of sales taxes, and they're on the interstate, and nobody's traveling this year to get to the Black Hills. And, you know, those towns are really in a tight spot in terms of having to look back at their reserves, whereas we would really not have to use much of our reserves based on what we've got in front of us here. On each of the sections, for any questions on revenue?
No.
The one note I would add, and then Denise, maybe you can speak more about this. We got our first April sales tax payment today. And that payment looks relatively normal to us. That covers the period from April 1 to April 20, which does encompass that period where we had already restricted patrons at businesses. So it's entirely possible that we could see no real impact on our sales tax here. That would be the best case scenario for me.
Third penny was a little bit lower than normal, but
How
that's
much?
to be.
What was third penny?
Third
Do you
penny was
remember?
700 and was under 1,000.
Because normally it's about what, nine?
It's usually, no,
Just over 2,000,
What did we budget for the year for that?
26,000.
26,000.
yeah,
Okay.
so,
Part of the challenge there, of course, is that we had planned on using third penny
Right,
funds for other
right.
operational dollars, for like the pool, for example, so. On the expense side, under the general fund, I have notes on most of the reductions we've made there. Some of them have also increased. I talked at the last city council meeting about the force agreement with Stockwell, that's been increased. Our budget for legal has been increased. That was for additional legal work on ordinances and resolutions around COVID-19, some legal protections against litigation that we're going through, those kinds of things. wages throughout this budget. The significant change you'll see on wages is going to be, in the water and sewer funds, because of the vacancies we've had there and the different rates at which we've hired since. But also in library, where our part-time staff, simply aren't working right now. What we are staffing is the hours that, Audra works, and that's it. So that will limit wages for a number of months to come. One thing that we did not, touch at all was police, fire, and ambulance, in terms of expenses. In the middle of a pandemic, I think that, first responders in particular, we need to make sure that we keep those whole, and protect those funds as much as possible. When we get to highways and streets, and then a little bit in parks as well, is where I start to get a little bit worried, because I think we have some opportunities this year. On highways and streets, there's certainly no shortage of work to be done there. There's plenty of patching to be done, plenty of potholes that need to be filled. We've got a fair amount of crack sealing that'll be done this year in preparation for next year's slurry seal. There's plenty of work there. And we had hoped to do more with this budget than the new budget will allow. We've tried to keep that mostly on the equipment and material side, but also not make it so that we can't do anything in that department this summer. I think we still have enough to take care of, the asphalt we need to purchase. Equipment-wise, we're actually sitting pretty good right now. I can't think of anything significant that we need in that department immediately. The only vehicle we had looked at phasing out was actually in the Parks Department. We talked about that for next year. There's not a whole lot that we need equipment-wise right now in that department, so we pulled $12,000 out of that. Salaries and wages, we reduced that to current department wages. As you know, we had, I can't remember if Brian had been on staff for last year's budget, he's probably just coming on.
But we increased his for
Right,
temporarily.
yes.
Right. And I think I don't remember, was I supposed to split out his salary between water, sewer, and?
The excess should be going to water and sewer.
Okay,
Yep,
I think I have to look at it.
that's fine. But we've had a fair amount of turnover in that department, so, we've had a chance to recalculate what those wages would be for this year. That, of course, brings down Medicare retirement and so on and so forth. Travel, for the most part, for most departments, was cut down to what I would consider minimum. We've already used some of it this year. Most of our conferences have been canceled at this point. Just a couple here and there that haven't. Those are generally the nationwide conferences. I expect the ICMA conference to be canceled. The American Public Works Conference was canceled today. And that conference is not until late August. So that's looking quite a ways out. Insect and weed control pulled back a little bit. Recreation administration, this is one where I had a little bit harder time here, because we had planned to use approximately $12,000 as discretionary funds for the Parks Board this year, and it looked like that was going to go towards the softball field renovation. I'm a little torn on this. I could go either way, if for no other reason than that, if we don't have programs, now is the perfect time to take care of that field. Ideally, I'd have people out there right now working on it, so we can still have fall ball, fall high school ball. And so
We're
on.
talking that lowest field right on that?
Correct.
Furthest to the west.
Yeah.
There's a drainage and grade issue. Certainly some safety issues with a giant light pole out in the center field that we'd love to relocate. We actually think that we might be able to move the fence in to take that out of play, but that remains to be seen at this point. So that was a tougher call. Again, our goal here is to reduce use of reserve funds for operational funds this year. I don't have a problem dipping into those funds, but if we don't have to, I feel like it's prudent not to. So those are things that I feel like maybe high priority items that could still be added back in. Concerts, this is an area where I think we simply have have to cancel our summer concert series. You know, given the age range that we typically attract to that concert program, I think it's wise just to limit the attendance at that in particular. That's not a significant savings, but that's more out of abundance of caution for public health and community safety.
Have you had conversations with, has that been?
I have not talked to,
Okay.
I haven't talked to her. Parks, pretty much the same story there, though we did increase wages, you'll note, by $7,000 to make up for the loss of inmate labor. 2018, we spent just over $20,000, 2019, just under $20,000. In 2019, we actually had staff for a much longer period too. I think we had, Lauren was here until mid-November, if I remember right. So we were able to stretch that timeline out and do a lot of great work at that time. Even with that, we still ended up under 20,000 for the year. So this would bring it up to 19. Make a few small adjustments here and there, particularly in supplies and materials. And what that typically goes for is, you know, if we're cleaning restrooms, toilet paper, those kinds of things, paper towels. Yep. If we don't have those bathrooms open or those concession stands open, we'll obviously use less materials. Library, not a ton here to look at. Just pulled a few things back here and there and tried to keep it in line with last year's as much as we could. The biggest change there is going to be salaries and wages, and again, that was just you know, moving our part-time staff will not be there for approximately 4 months, I think is what I planned on in that calculation. Museum did not change much there. I would like to pull that repairs and maintenance, but that's really a contractual obligation we have at this point. Since we accepted that grant last year, we've got to finish that project out. Economic development, did talk with Sharice for a while about pulling that back a little bit. I had it pulled down to 86,500. I put that back in, I put that 10,000 back in late last week, just figuring on the projects we're talking about, access to those dollars outside of the city's control may be very important for coming up projects. So all in all, it results in a $10,000 loss, which would have to be sustained by reserve funds.
Is the economic development, fair amount of that money is the, lot reimbursement, correct? Is that kind of what a lot of that was earmarked for?
I think in the past it has been.
Okay,
It's certainly not used as heavily now as it has been in the
Okay.
past. I think when the Meadows was done, that was probably the largest use in recent years. And I don't know that that's going to be used on Countryside. In fact, I highly doubt it would be
Yeah.
used up there, simply because we don't need the lots themselves will be cheap enough without the additional incentive. So that's speculation on my part. I don't know that that's where they're gonna go with it. But I think it would be tough to maintain that with 150 new homes. Any questions on general fund?
so what are your thoughts? How do you two feel about it?
I feel more optimistic today than I did from last month, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got anecdotal evidence that people are shopping locally more, and I think that's great. Assuming that our sales tax stayed okay for a month, that's great news. That being said, the longer this goes on, the more wages are lost, the higher unemployment goes,
Right.
and the less likely people are to shop, period. So whatever spillover we're seeing right now locally, because people aren't going to Sioux Falls, that may yet disappear too. But I'm far more optimistic now than I was a week ago.
Well, you gotta keep in mind, I mean, most people who file for unemployment are getting paid more than they did when they were working.
Some, yes. Yes.
I mean, it's about $48,000 a year, if they break it out. And I would say that's well over the, I mean, I don't know what the average
think we're at the 35.
Lennox Citizens at, but
44, I think, was the meeting last year.
Okay. It's improved.
so I mean, it's not like, again, they've got to apply, they've got to get.
Yep.
But I don't think.
And Congress didn't have to continually
Correct.
refill that bucket for the emergency unemployment. Your regular unemployment will, that's got normal limits on it.
I'm encouraged just with the sales tax, I mean, the third penny it is what it is, right?
Right.
That wasn't, it was dollars, but it wasn't huge dollars.
It's more painful for those businesses than it is for us.
Correct, correct. And we hope to, we're all hopeful that at some point in the near future that
Right.
gets opened back up and maybe everybody goes gangbusters and it winds up where it was before, but,
Well, I stopped for a sandwich on the way here tonight, and the only one has apparently changed their hours to Tuesdays through Saturdays now. So,
Oh.
my hope is that that's simply a convenience issue, and
Right.
not trying to, stem the tide.
right. All things considered, I was, when we originally talked about this, I would have a big smile on my face if we would have thought it was $10,000 at that time.
Right.
I think everybody was preparing for a lot worse
Well, yeah, and that's the way,
situation.
that's the way you have to do it. I mean, you prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
And again, this is really, my goal with this was to avoid using reserves.
Right,
We could continue with the same budget we have today and have no problem. We'd be fine. We have plenty of cash reserves to take care of this. But we also know that we have a long-term goal of establishing a healthier reserve balance. And if we can make decisions today that don't significantly impact that balance in the future, I think that sets us up far better for future projects when we decide to finish Boynton or need to secure additional debt for a quick storm sewer project or an emergency repair, those kinds of things.
I say we move forward with the new budget.
Yes.
Anything on, if we're done with general fund, I can move on to rec fund. You have anything else?
No, just the,
The actual supplemental budget?
Yes.
You want to talk about that quick?
sure.
Because it's a little strange.
So, yeah, I know, so, I got ahold of the auditor because I've never really had where we've reduced, once we've passed the budget, we've never reduced revenue or reduced, so I was a little confused, and, so she cleared up some stuff for me. She said, basically, you can't, once you pass your budget is your budget. That's it, it's passed, it's gone to the auditor, it's everything. But you can do a supplemental budget. So you'll notice on the pages, there's yellow and orange, because I have to have color in my world. So the yellow is actually the amount that we're increasing. So I went through and I looked at what was increased in here, and basically that's what I would put together for a supplemental budget. So anything that's increased, then I came up with $29,991, and we could take that out of contingency. So we're not even going into our reserves. That would be our contingency, and that's probably a little more than half of our contingency. I would say 60% of it. So.
you're okay with that?
Yeah, because I think that, we may end up looking at the end of the year where we end up at.
Right.
And if any departments go over, we'll have to look at another one then. But hopefully, if we kind of stick with this model per se, we should be fine.
So let me ask you a question. If we stick with this model, we use our contingency and we decide there's no summer rec stuff, right? I'm just using that as an example. You use that ball field.
Yep.
And you decided, hey, this is a project we should do, and it's $10,000. That is something then we could do a supplemental budget for out of the reserves at that time.
Well,
If you needed to.
If you needed to.
Right now, it is budgeted.
Right. I'm just using that as an example to try and understand.
The other thing I would throw out there, Denise and I talked about this afternoon after she had talked to the auditor. We don't have to pass anything necessarily.
Right.
We don't have to pass a new budget.
Right.
You don't have to pass a budget ordinance, I should say.
Right, there's.
You could simply just accept this new budget and say, this is what we're gonna use for the rest of the year, and that's how we move forward. That takes the ordinance out of it. We're certainly not planning on spending more money than what we appropriated in the ordinance, so
No, but just to clarify, if,
we would still have to update those numbers.
right, so the department cannot go over. So if we budget and we subtract out of streets, but parks goes over, we need to do a supplemental budget
Right.
of parks
For parks.
to make sure
From
that
there
Yeah.
to,
that it's a positive number. So we could wait until, October or November and revisit and look at where it's at. And if we need to do a supplemental budget at that time, that's when we probably would do it.
Which we would have to do anyway.
Exactly,
I mean, we're obligated to do that when we get up to that limit anyway.
yeah.
I would think looking at just waiting, because one of the things that I was thinking of, we don't know how much, even in the parks, let's say we're gonna open them, that we have to do, disinfectants and buying that stuff, if that's what we need to do, there could be additional costs there. There might not be, but there could be. As fluid as this thing is, 5 weeks from now, we'll be looking at a whole different animal, but just prepare for the worst. If we're gonna be opening up, if we have to do some special disinfectants or whatever for even, I don't know, baseball, softball, do they have to spray down the bats? I don't know.
I think it makes sense to take a breath here. We can always do a supplemental
Yep.
later. 60 days from now, we're gonna know a lot.
Yeah, I would,
A lot more.
if you want to pass a supplemental budget ordinance, we should start that clock at the next meeting. I don't think we necessarily have to do that. I think if the committee would recommend to the council or otherwise, here's what we're gonna do for now. Pull everything back in these areas, and we'll look at it again in 60 days. I don't see any issue with any of that. Because I think what this is simply abundance of caution. We're just being careful. We don't wanna go too far in if we don't.
And being proactive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I'm good with that.
Fund 201, the recreation fund.
Oh, sorry, I didn't give you guys those, I didn't realize that.
Oh,
There wasn't that much, was there?
no, rec fund was only, I pulled soccer fees and concessions out of revenue, and soccer expense and concessions out of expense. So my thinking there is if we do have recreation programs, do we want to run a concession stand where there are a bunch of people standing in line?
Hearing what Chad's saying with some of what T's doing though, if we were to do that, if we'd have the spacing done.
That it could be done appropriately.
Yeah, if it could be done appropriately, is it worth that? I don't
Maybe
know.
you scale it back too.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of, you know what I'm saying, instead of a whole bunch of offerings and having to have multiple people in there to do
You have just hot
multiple
dogs and
things, maybe you
hamburgers.
just do something real simple, just some drinks and things
Okay.
like that.
That's
Maybe the
easy
more
enough.
popular things.
I don't know, just a thought, not saying
Pickles.
that's what we have.
Pickles.
Yeah,
Pickles are popular.
pickles and soda. No sunflower seeds.
Would you
I
like-
don't want people spitting all over it.
That's a fair point. No sunflower seeds, got it.
Would you like an original pickle or a diet pickle?
Low sodium, there you go.
Caffeine-free pickles.
Yeah.
I think people would understand that if it was
Yeah.
explained to them.
So we can, I've adjusted it to about 75% of what we had for both.
Part of it is, I'm annoyed by the fact that we gotta wait till tomorrow to hear what Christie's gonna be unveiling. Well, she could have unveiled it today and chose not to. But my guess is, in talking with Chad, has talked with John, that we're going to be seeing a move toward where we got a new normal. We just have to figure that one out. For our bars and everything, so.
Third penny, I reduced that revenue from 26,000 to 13,000, so 50% reduction there. transfer out to the pool of 22,000. So to make that whole, we would use cash balance. So we'd use the third penny reserve essentially to make up that difference. Second penny, I was a lot happier about second penny a week ago than I am today. We were going to have a gain there, a couple weeks ago, when I first started looking at this budget, advised Stockwell to pull back on street repair project for this year. We're planning on spending about $125,000, generally, on whichever streets need repairs this year. Considering that we were going to lose that second penny, we told them to hold back on that. I'm really happy we did that now, because last week we got an invoice from the DOT that we owe $100,000 yet on our Highway 44 rec trail balance. Bit of a surprise to us, but we do owe it. My assumption was that that would have been paid back in 17 when the project was completed. But that's not how that's done apparently. I don't know why it's billed 2 or 3 years later, but it is.
DOT needs money, I guess.
Do you recall that? I mean, I was trying to think about when that was done, and we had to pay a percentage of that project, there's like,
20%, wasn't it?
I think so.
18.
18%.
But
And
we-
figured, and then they did the project, and I don't know, I think it came in a little bit over, but I don't recall what the total project was like 600?
A little over 600, I think.
Is that what it was? I don't remember exactly.
But again, I would think that would have been paid.
That was in 2017,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Did you see the past, what, did it say past due?
No, it did not. And we did pull, there was a little over 100,000 paid in 2017, but that was for a different project. So
Must
there
have been
must
for
have been
Highway
another-
17 rec trail. That been what they.
That would have been 2014.
That'd be about
15.
right.
So,
That was paid about 3 years later.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
so, yeah, that was a bit of a surprise.
So outside of that, we have the slurry seal project this year, that we'll be doing that every year anyway. Burlington Northern, we had signed an agreement with them back in 2018, I believe. So they're gonna redo their railroad approaches. It sounds like they're going to do those this year. We were hoping for it last year. They pushed it back. So that would change. It also increased the transfer out from second penny to ambulance. We are seeing reduced calls for the last 5-6 weeks. Talking with Ellen on our staff meeting this morning, we're making the assumption that's because people aren't treating the ambulance as a mobile emergency room at this point. Nobody really wants to go to the hospital or be exposed to anybody that's been by a hospital, so people are using the ambulance less. That's good health-wise, but it does impact our expenses on the ambulance side. So assuming that we do that 25% reduction in sales tax revenues, we would see a $67,000 loss in second penny this year. If we were to not transfer anything out to ambulance at this point and simply wait until the end of the year and do our supplemental, it's hard to say what that would look like, but right now it's $22,000 transfer additional to what we had planned. Though I would say, again, last year we only transferred out $31,000 to ambulance, even though we budgeted for 60. So I think there's some wiggle room there. I'm not sure why we've always over budgeted that, unless it's abundance of caution, but we decided to stick with that for this year as well. 225 is a drainage fund. That did not change at all. That's already, that principal and interest is already being collected, and the expenses are on a set schedule, so nothing changed there. In the water fund, I didn't change anything on the revenue side. Did see reductions on salaries and wages by quite a bit, by almost $43,000, by changing staff essentially, changing what we pay them. This did assume an initial wage for one of those operators lower than what we will end up paying 2020, so I think that needs to be adjusted yet. So I would expect that to go up by $8,000 or $9,000 a year yet, just on wages, so it'd be closer to 45,000 in reduction. I also increased professional salaries and, or professional services and fees by $18,000. That's to get that additional class 3 oversight that we're going to need to submit our water reports. We have essentially 6 months of grace period to do it as we're doing it now. But by, I would say September, we want to have a contract in place to ensure that we're getting that submitted with the right licensure. And I did increase training and for the water department with new staff coming in. So even with those changes, we would reduce our net gain by $32,000, but our net gain in water would still be just over $150,000 this year. Sewer fund is very similar to what we did in water. Hours or salaries and wages changed quite a bit. The biggest significant increase on the sewer side was professional services and fees. You recall we did not budget for sewer televising this year, but we did approve a bid for that at the last
Last meeting.
2 meetings ago. And so that came in just under $106,000, just about exactly where we anticipated. So that's increased under there.
But was that televised and everything?
Everything but
But the
main,
new-
central basin, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
Sanitary only.
correct.
I won't get too deep in this, but we did find another sewer facilities assessment from 2005. So I started going through some of that today. So we did one in 05 and 07. There's a little more data in the 05 that we can use, so. Other than that, not a whole lot changed there. Professional services and fees again increased under sewer for class 3 oversight. It's actually class 2 oversight in water, that's a mistype on the previous page. So our net gain in sewer would change by a negative $84,000. Our net gain would still be $156,000 for this fiscal year. Ambulance reduced revenue by about $24,000 just due to decreased use. And we covered that with transfers in from second and looks like maybe third, but probably all second. I don't think we can use third for that. Workers' comp adjusted came in lower than we anticipated this year, so that offsets some of it. We increased supplies and materials given the PPE that they have to purchase. It is getting a little more difficult to purchase that now. Though we did get a number of gowns today, thankfully, that showed up, so that's great news. The county and the state have been great at supplying us with whatever they can from their stockpile as well. Right away, in early March, we got a number of boxes of masks from Harold Timmerman at Lincoln County Emergency Management, and that was very helpful. So in ambulance, we'd still end up with a net gain or loss of nothing, and we'd still balance it out by the end of the year, which we have to do regardless. But we'd simply make up that revenue with a larger transfer from second thing. The pool fund, this was a tough one to get a hold of. This is where I made some changes today, based on the projected or tentative June 1 opening date for the pool. Pool membership fees are brought down by a third. Did the same by 25% for salaries and wages. Other than that, not a whole lot of adjustments to be made. The net gain there is still $5,500, and the reason we had planned on that was so that we could start building up that pool reserve fund, so that 50 years from now, when there's gaping holes in the bottom of the current pool or the new pool, we won't be looking at another bond necessarily, and hopefully we've maintained it well enough that it doesn't get to that point. So
So with that, with the swimming lesson fees in there, like we as a city will run swimming lessons and pay, or how does that? 'Cause
Here,
Bruce
I
does-
put one big asterisk on that.
Okay,
Assuming that they start classes to train lifeguards again. Justin's been searching high and low for any way for us to get certain trainings done virtually, but these are really hands-on trainings.
yeah,
That's the way everybody's doing them. I don't think they're going to change that. So that there's a big, June 1 is a tentative date, I think is doable, assuming that we have the right certifications in place.
right,
I think all of our, I'll have Justin check on this, but I think all of our lifeguards already have a certification. The last one that we were waiting for was Ms. DeCou, and I think she got that just before everything closed down, so.
Yep.
She timed that very well.
so with those, I guess what I'm asking, would you add those lessons into a work week?
Yes,
Like they're just getting hourly, like they are, they're, okay,
correct. So we would have specific staff that are trained, water safety instructors. So they go through that certification, and then they would be responsible for those morning swimming lessons, and would have reduced hours during lifeguarding hours. That's all I've got for funds. I think we've been through all of them. Again, the council doesn't, or the committee doesn't have to take action necessarily. If it is the committee's wish to have something in place if things continue along this path, or if our sales taxes really aren't as good as we right now believe they might be, my suggestion would be to simply pass this on as a recommendation to the full council for consideration, and have a larger debate at that level about whether this is necessary or not.
that's
I
fine.
think that's how I feel about it. You're just gonna make that an agenda item for the next meeting and we'll discuss it then?
Yep, we can do that. The next meeting is May 11th, so we got a couple weeks yet before that one.
Right. And we'll get sales tax revenue. When does that come out? When does the report come out? Is that every month?
Yes, and then, so we'll get another smaller one at the end of this month,
Yep,
and then, but usually the bigger one comes at the beginning,
okay.
so
So we'll have a fresh report before May 11th.
we probably will not know. Because today is the,
Well, but before our second meeting in May, we will.
Hold tight here. Let me see what we got from, we got some information from the state last week. We were still waiting to hear if it was, information that we already had or information that we're going to be getting in a week. So,
Gotcha.
the challenge with sales tax is always that we're a month behind.
Right, it's in
And so
line.
we've, as the municipal league has been advocating, to the governor and Department of Revenue to share that data as quickly as humanly possible so that we can start making preparations. So they did give us a report last week. I just need to find it.
I was gonna say, I don't think I saw it.
It was just the administrators. Okay. So the report compares tax reported, not yet paid, for March 20 and March 19. Okay. I'm trying to throw this up on the screen if somebody has a remote. So there's Lennox on the bottom there. So this would have been for March returns so these receipts not yet collected. That looks pretty close to what we just received, not far off. It was actually a 3% increase over last year. But this is for March, which is not when we had this established yet. March 17, I think, is the first that we really started to take action on any of this. I think if you look, March 11, or on the May 11 meeting, we will have the first, the finance report for April compiled. So we will still have a month-to-month comparison and year-over-year comparison that we can provide. And I think at this point, we're going to be ahead of last year on that as well, with today's payment, so.
April will be a good numbers to see though.
April data is gonna tell us the story.
Yeah.
That's what we kind of been planning on. Which again, gives us time to make these adjustments,
Right.
so.
So I think we just stay the course.
So put this on the May 11, agenda for full council to discuss,
Yep.
and we can, go from there.
Kind of an agreement, right? At this point, using contingency is probably the way to go, and use a supplemental down the road if we wouldn't.
You know, the odds that you're gonna have to do a supplemental anyway are high.
Right.
It happens.
We're gonna have a clearer picture of what that's gonna be by then.
In October, November, yes.
Okay.
So May 11th is next. The reason I say my calendar, you know, how that gets sent out, my calendar says May 4th is the next meeting and May 18th. Whoever sets that up, I don't know if that got messed up. And then June 1st.
What calendar? Do you have it like on your Apple calendar?
Yeah, that.
Oh, you have meetings on there?
Yeah, all of a sudden it just started notifying me whenever a meeting comes up, I can accept, decline. I was like, no.
Oh,
well,
sure
that's-
enough.
That's handy.
Sure enough.
Yeah, it is.
Mine's every week.
Yours is every week?
Yeah.
Okay. So there must be.
Well, you wanna do that?
Do I wanna do it every week? Sure.
Why not?
Oh, that's strange. I'll get that adjusted. I'm seeing that too.
Oh, it is, yeah, now that you say that.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I just kinda glanced at that, that's why I didn't respond
Well,
to
it
that.
says here Broad Drops is the only one that accepted the meetings, so.
Yes.
I don't recall doing that.
He's got nothing going on.
Maybe we got a mole.
Yeah.
I can't change it. I'm not the organizer.
Who was it?
Who was the organizer?
We got them all.
Let's see.
Well, I think everybody just declined it and maybe we just send out a new one.
The Ever team, the best city ever team,
Oh,
that
that's
was-
yours.
That's me.
in the invite.
Ta-da!
Really? Huh.
Yep.
Let's see here.
So this rec trail thing.
Yes.
Oh, so it is Microsoft
Didn't we have
Teams,
to have
but-
that 18% at time of project?
You had to have it committed,
Correct.
yes. That would be standard for a project of that size.
What are you thinking?
I don't know what I'm thinking. It just seems odd.
You're thinking like me, that we don't like surprise bills.
Right.
Yes.
And I know we have the money accounted for, that's,
We do. That's not the
But-
problem.
It just seems late. Like, it just seems,
Yes.
like, not to have an earlier bill on record or some kind of invoice or something prior, saying,
Well,
expect to pay this,
In X year.
right, or something.
do we have the
the
contract?
$7,000 payment that they said we made, I can't find it. I,
Oh, crap.
Do we have the
It's-
contract from that somewhere?
Yes. I have it in my office.
We should probably look into that.
I think so too.
If you wanna reach out to DOT or whoever's
okay,
the fiscal agent on it, I'll get that contract sent around.
Cause they had the DOT had the fiduciary responsibility to make payments to the contractors on that, correct?
Yes, it was a DOT project.
So I find
Strange.
I mean, the state's budget isn't you know what I'm saying, see where I'm going with this?
3 years.
It isn't 3 years in length,
No, not typically.
so something just doesn't
Something-
smell right.
We will look into this further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we would've known we had this 3 years,
What's that?
Today,
I missed your question.
were we supposed to start at 6 today?
No, so,
So, although board docs at 5:30.
5:30.
5:30.
But
I
I was
called them
here
up
and
at
nobody
6
came,
o'clock
so
and
we're
it-
good.
Did I
Oh, I
say
got a
six?
text that says, starter waiting for you, like 40 foot, so maybe text me at 7 o'clock.
I thought, yeah, I texted you at 7.
do you have your time?
Just right before you
on
walked
the
in.
phone?
But May 11th is 6 o'clock,
7. Oh,
So,
May 11th is 6 for P and Z,
P and Z.
Yep.
Yes.
and we'll do council at 7.
Okay.
And that is looking very positive, so. We'll have that final out this week, hopefully.
Move dirt.
that's a good deal.
Yes.
It's
It's
amazing.
exciting.
You want me to shut that camera?
I think we have to have a formal adjournment first.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're in adjournment.
Thank you.